to me, He is everything to me, and everything shall always be. I will never cease to raise a song of gladness in His praise. Here and in the world above, my soul shall sing of saving love. Life and light and joy is He, the precious friend who died for me. Glory be to Him forever. Endless praises to Christ the Lamb. He has filled my life with sunshine. He has made me what I am. Oh, that everyone would know Him. Oh, that all would adore. Oh, that all would trust the love of the mighty friend above, and be His forevermore. He is everything to me, to me. He is everything to me, and everything shall always be. I will never cease to raise a song of gladness in His praise. Here and in the world above, my soul shall sing of saving love. Life and light and joy is He, the precious friend who died for me. Maybe see.
Morning, everybody. Morning. I can't do that from up there, so I'm going to come sit right here. Having a wonderful time this morning working through the nerves, everybody. Can't tell. Welcome, everybody, to New Iberia Church of Christ. I'm so glad to have everybody here with me. Is everybody okay with me doing this right here? Yeah? Oh, really? Okay, you got me. Yep, we could just go ahead and do it like that. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's what this is about. What's that? Pull up a chair? I don't know if you noticed, but when I did this for the first time ever, oh, by the way, if you're visiting with us, I am not the regular preacher here, if you hadn't caught that. I am filling in for Kenny. He's on vacation. Wish him well. I hope he enjoys that vacation. And I just come up here and suffer through the nerves and anxiety and try to deliver a message the best that I can. And I know how, but I don't know if you caught it, Brandon, but 2 weeks ago I set both of these chairs up, one right there, so I could sit down if I really needed to, but actually it just kind of worked like a barrier to keep me from wandering all across the stage like I'm kind of doing right now, maybe from wandering off of the stage as I did earlier. But in preparing this message for this week especially, and what I wanted to talk about was just, I think so much about how I got here. How did I end up right here on stage? So I go back and just kind of think over what's my journey been like. I mean, I've shared a bunch of that with you already, especially I remember growing up right down the road in Coteau, Louisiana. Of course, some of you are familiar with the area. It's wonderful. If you've been to the Our Lady of Prompt Succor out there, it's a great church especially. I grew up learning in that church, but being raised a Catholic, there's a bunch of Catholic churches around here. So, of course, I would visit to Franklin, to Lowerville, to Delcom, Lydia, all over the place. And it just seemed everywhere that I would end up, or my mom would take me, I would just keep getting asked to do things. And as a little boy, just asked, hey, would you mind passing around the tray or the basket, however they did it in your church, if whatever you're familiar with, just asked to do that. Or, hey, would you mind bringing the communion up at this time for a church? Would you do that? And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I hated walking in front and being in front of people where everybody was looking and staring. And just why? Why are you asking me to do this? There's so many other people here. Why not ask them to do it? And just further along in my life, in the Army and my Eagle Way Church of Christ family in Kentucky, they just cordially asked me to be a greeter at the door. You know, greet people as they're walking in. Get involved one way or the other, right? Here, when I came here, just subtly asked, hey, would you mind passing around a tray? Would you mind being a greeter? Would you mind doing a few things for the church? So, you know, slowly but surely, where I was very, very comfortable sitting in the back, right where you are, Ray, sitting all the way in the back up against the wall, just nice and comfortable. I want to come in here, I want to hear a message. Not just here, but I wanted to go to church to hear that message. And, you know, wanted to be close to the door so I could just get right out of here. And it felt like, what? It just felt like I was sitting on the sidelines. And that's what my illustration this morning was kind of meant to be. You know, you get to that point to where, one, you don't want to do it at all. You don't want to step forward at all. You just like, no, I'm going to sit back down right to where I'm comfortable. Or, you know, you decide to move forward. You get up on stage and you get in it and you just right back off the stage. You know, maybe I could do this from the sidelines. Maybe I can, you know. I don't know. It just still feels to me, it feels so surreal that I'm up here talking to everybody right now, and it feels so surreal that you've given me the opportunity, and the support has just been astronomical. Really, I can't thank everybody enough. But at the end of the day, my palms are still sweaty, my knees weak, my arms are heavy. There would be vomit on the sweater already, but I'm not Slim Shady. Come on. Only a few of you get that reference. Which is wonderful. I absolutely love it that only a few of you get that reference, because, you know, when I was 15, I dyed my hair bleach blonde. Bleach blonde, and my mom told me, you know, if you do that, your hair's going to fall out one day. So let it serve as a reminder to everybody. You know, listen to Mom, she has some wisdom behind there. But anyways, you know, I have it written up here, I have it underlined. Are you sitting on the sideline? Is that where you're at today? Is that where you're at? I asked if you would be okay with me preaching this sermon, preaching this message from the sidelines, but in all actuality, I mean, would you really be okay with that? Would you really be okay looking at the back of my head while I talk to everybody and try to deliver a message on God's behalf? On God's behalf. This isn't for me to just say, hey, look at Tyson, look how far you've come. No, not at all. So, I don't know. Are you on the sidelines? Maybe you're aware that football, the NFL, is starting this weekend, right? Some of you are excited about that. Some of you are probably sitting next to the door hoping I'd wrap this up early so you can get home and go watch some football. I used to be that way. No shame in that. Now, I say no shame. Yeah, there's some shame in it. But I was on the sideline and then. You know, it just so happens, coincidentally, today is the anniversary of 9/11. You know, 21 years ago, if you were there, a lot of you remember exactly where you were when it happened, what was going on at the time. You know, for me, I know I was in school. I was a junior in high school, or sophomore in high school, excuse me. And for whatever reason, I do not remember at all hearing what happened. Until the very end of the day, and after football practice, my mom came up to me and was like, hey, we're going to war. I was like, what? What are you even talking about, Ma? And she casually explained to me, don't talk to the Marine recruiters, because I was talking to them at the time, they're going to send you to war. Like, what's going on, Mom? What's going on? I have no idea. Kind of fill me in. But then when I slowly started to hear about what was happening, and I saw it for myself, and fast forward 21 years now to just think about that, a lot of you here in the front row, you weren't even alive when it happened. But before that happened, it kind of felt like we all, as Americans, were just sitting on the sideline, right? A whole war was being waged against us. None of us knew. At least the media didn't tell us. Well, it kind of came out of the blue. It was a surprise to most of the country, just most of us. Being on the sideline, right? So let me ask you. I know I really appreciate everybody who said yes for me preaching that right there, because trust me, I would love to be nice and comfortable and not looking at anybody, preaching this message, and just there's no growth in the comfort zone. I've said this before. Somebody famous had said that. I stole that from somebody, of course. We all know there's no growth in the comfort zone. But if you're not okay with me preaching from the sideline, do you think God is all right with you taking the talent that he's given you to just sit on the sideline? What do you think? We've all been given gifts. Every single one of us. It's not just a gift of life, though. We all were given life. You're alive today, you're here for a reason, of course, but it's not just a gift of life. It's a gift that I'm talking about. It's personalized by God. That personalized gift is your talent, what you're good at. If you were here for Brother Ken's message this morning in Bible study, we talked all about that. And what you're special at, what you're good at, how can you advance the kingdom of God? You know, and if you don't believe that you were given a gift, why don't you just go ahead and turn to Romans chapter 12. Chapter 12, starting in verse 1. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say, everyone among you, grace. By the grace given to me. This is Paul writing this. I think of Paul's story. Where was Paul before he met Jesus? Anybody? Where was he? He was persecuting Jesus. He was persecuting anyone who believed and anyone who spoke his name. Anyone who dared to just bring that message forward. That's what Paul was doing. He was persecuting these people and having them put to death. And then what happened? The grace given to me. What does grace mean? Unmerited favor. Well, let's break it down even further. What does unmerited mean? Undeserved, unearned. Paul didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve the grace, but he was given it. Favor. It's favor. He was chosen. Chosen, undeserved to be chosen. Let that sink in for a minute. I mean, really, do any of us deserve it? Do any of us deserve salvation? Now, we all know that we fall short. We all know that we sin. We're just picking up. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are in one body in Christ, and individually members one of another, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Let us use them. If prophecy, in proportion to our faith. If service, in our serving. The one who teaches, in his teaching. The one who exhorts, in his exhortation. the one who contributes in generosity, the one who leads with zeal, the one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness. I underlined a few words in all those, in what I just read, and really I already talked about grace. It's just grace being that unmerited favor. I want you to know that that favor is given to you. When you're searching for a reason and why you're here, start there. You're favored, one way or the other. But I say to everyone among you not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment. Sober. Well, what does sober mean? Well, obviously, the obvious definition of sober is not intoxicated. That's what Webster's dictionary will tell you right off the bat. But there are many definitions to sober and what we call sober. And one of those definitions is marked by temperance, moderation, or seriousness. Or seriousness. But to think with sober judgment, get serious about what you're thinking about. Don't take it for granted. Get serious if you're sitting there on the sideline and you're just wondering, am I in it? Am I not? What's my purpose? I don't know. Maybe take it serious. Maybe really get serious about it when you're in your studies, when you're praying, when you're trying to talk to God. If you're a non-believer, if you're just kind of on the fence about it and you don't know who you're talking to, get serious about it. Because trust me, God knows your heart. He knows when you're serious. And he'll call you out on it in an instant. For those of us who have been there, you know. Fred, I see the smile on your face. But each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. The measure, it's a noun. It's not a verb, it's a noun. A standard unit used to describe or to express the size, the amount, or degree of something. The measure of faith that God has assigned. So he's given you an amount of faith. Is all of that the same? Absolutely not. It's not all the same. We are many members, and we have different functions. Just go on to keep reading. For as in one body, just said it, we have many members, and many members do not all have the same function. But still many are in one body in Christ, individually, members one of another. I don't know if you were here for Brother Ken's message this morning. He talked about team and being part of that team. When you're on that team with Christ as your leader, you really think you're going to be on the sidelines? You really think he wants you on the sidelines and he wants you to be comfortable with that? And reading on, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them. If prophecy in proportion to our faith, and I underline proportion as a part or a share, is a number considered comparative to the relation to a whole. And that's just to illustrate the point again that not all of us are equal. We all know this. We weren't made equal. Equal in his sight. In the faith that he's assigned to us and how he expects us to respond to that. It's proportionate to our faith. Proportionate to our faith. You don't have to go above and beyond. Does he want you to? Absolutely. Absolutely. But far too often, in preparing this message, I get into I'm sure, Ken, you'll know this, and anybody else who's delivering a message, you start writing things down, and you start wondering, is this enough? Is this the message that I'm trying to deliver? Maybe I should go into it some more and really put together bullet by bullet point of everything that I want to discuss. It just gets to be too much, and you get overwhelmed. And I got to a point yesterday when I was trying to wrap everything up, I felt completely overwhelmed, and I could feel my anxiety. I was like, wait a minute, hang on. A brother of mine stepped in and kind of helped me out with that and said, you're only a man. You're only a man. Your journey with Christ is new, but speak up for him. It'll be good enough. And that's huge encouragement. huge encouragement, and that's another thing Ken talked about. I actually told him after he finished Bible study this morning, I was like, man, you talked about everything that I was just going to deliver today, which he responded, it was funny how the Holy Spirit works, isn't it? Because I hadn't talked to him about what he was going to talk about this morning in Bible study, but it's just really, we could put it in quotation marks, funny how it just kind of all comes together, very conveniently. But I mentioned all of that really to talk about some things that, you don't have to do this for yourself, and we're not all equal, but some things that helped me, and one thing that especially helped me to take me from the back of the room and get me up here is, I read a book last year, and I say read the book. I'm terrible at reading. I feel like I'll start to read and just get tired. My mind will kind of wander off, and I lose focus in what I'm reading. So I find that I learn things better just by hearing somebody read it to me. So I purchased Audible and wanted to get into more books. And Brother Ron actually recommended a book for me that he thought I'd enjoy it. It was called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Anybody ever heard of it? Anybody? Maybe a couple of you? Jocko Willink and Leif Babin are former Navy SEALs. Jocko was a lieutenant commander as a Navy SEAL in 2006, and he discusses his time in Ramadi in Iraq during the surge and the war and everything that was going on out there. And Leif was one of his subordinate commanders. And they both put together a book that it talks about leadership from the SEAL perspective in war and leading a team into war. And it talks about just the leadership perspective in business and how all of that translates. And then more importantly, how leadership just translates into your life, into your everyday life. It starts, you ever picked up one of those books and you started reading and it just smacks you right in the face as soon as you start reading? It's one of those books. It starts really just right in part 1. Before it gets to chapter 1, part 1 is conveniently titled, Winning the War Within. And I don't know how many ways that you could say that, but really, isn't that the battle that we all face? It's to just win that war within yourself. That's really where it's going to start. And for me, that's where finding my love and my passion for Christ, it all started in just taking and winning that war within myself to figure out who I am, really. Who I am, why I've gone through the things that I've gone through, and for what purpose. When in chapter 1, it leads off with a story. Now, the whole chapter, if you read it, is 45 minutes long, so I'm going to try to condense that into maybe 30, 45 seconds. But the story is of an incident that happened with a Navy SEAL sniper unit. This is all in Iraq in Ramadi in the Malab district. And there's a Navy SEAL unit attached to an Army mechanized unit, mechanized being tanks, a Marine recon unit, as well as an Iraqi force detachment that's all working together in conjunction with each other to carry out the mission. Okay? And most missions start under the cover of darkness, if you're not aware. So as your snipers leave, usually about 3, 4 in the morning, so they can move under cover of darkness and get themselves set up. They'll get set up, they'll relay that information to the unit back home. I say back home, back in the base, and then everybody knows where everybody's supposed to be on the battlefield. That's what I'm getting at. Well, as time went on and firefights broke out, a bunch of confusion started to happen between the units, and it came back eventually that they ended up there. The Iraqi detachment force had a soldier killed as he was entering the building, and for the next preceding minutes, there was a firefight exchange between the members in that building and the U.S. forces outside of that building, in which the U.S. forces had called in everything. They called in the tanks to come level that building, and if the tanks wouldn't level the building, then the bombs from the sky would. But come to find out, as things progressed, as the chaos ensued, it just didn't feel right to Jocko, and he'll go on to explain his Navy SEALs were supposed to be around the area in which that building that was getting lit up was that's where his SEALs were supposed to be, around the area. Well, long story short, it was a blue on blue, fighting with each other. And blue on blue means coalition forces on coalition forces. It's he calls it a mortal sin. Very convenient. It's something that you never want to have happen in war. I mean, it's bad enough if you lose your life by an enemy combatant. To lose it at the hands of your own team, that's a tough one to deal with, especially as a leader. The story goes on as a blue on blue happens. They make it back to the base. Of course, there has to be some kind of follow-up. There has to be, what's the word I'm looking for? There has to be an investigation, right? Somebody is at fault for this to happen. This doesn't just happen by accident. Even in war, as chaotic as it is, there's somebody to blame. And Jocko was asked, being the lieutenant commander, to put together a report. Let's figure out where everything went wrong. So he's put together a nice long report, and at the end of it, he still didn't feel right about himself. It's like there's just one piece missing. There's something missing in this about why can't I figure out who's to blame for this? And then when it came time, really, who was really to blame? You know, as a leader takes extreme ownership. Jocko, I am to blame. I take ownership in absolutely all of it. We could have done more to be prepared. We could have done more to communicate with our coalition forces. We could have done more to been trained before even stepping foot onto that battlefield for contingencies and everything that happens out there. But what he said that stood out for me the most especially is the best leaders don't just take responsibility for their job. They take extreme ownership that impacts their mission. And that is the number one characteristic for any high-performing team. You know, picks up in chapter 2, no bad teams, only bad leaders. Only bad leaders. And if you're trying to figure out anything about yourself, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror, be serious, be sober, be honest with yourself. It's not easy. I've stood there, it's not easy to admit my own failures as a husband, as a father, as a man. It's not easy to own those. But are we blaming somebody else? Are we blaming anybody else for our relationship or lack of relationship with Christ? Or are we looking in the mirror, looking at ourselves and really, you know what, this one's on me. This is right here on me. Chapter 3, I have it double underlined. Believe. Believe. In smaller letters, in the mission, of course, is the context of the book, but just believe. You know, in this chapter, it talks about SEALs function highly as a team together, right? We all know this. We're all proud of our Navy SEALs and what they're able to do, the capabilities that they can perform, and really, being an American, it's really comforting to know that we have that kind of force that could come looking for us if they choose to. And they could probably get us and come save us. But at this point in time, they were also being asked to train the Iraqi forces. And when I say Iraqi forces, I'm not talking about conventional army. Because in 2003, when we went in there, we did away with the Iraqi army. They were gone. So we had to train up a force of people who have never even done a push-up. Kane, can you do a push-up? Yeah, maybe 1, 2. Jumping jack? What would that look like, I wonder? Your face says it all. Some of you may have seen the YouTube videos. Have you seen those videos of those guys out there in the mountains doing a jumping jack? Now imagine, Navy SEALs, Navy SEALs, the best of the best, having to train somebody how to do a jumping jack the proper way. Oh, you're not just being told you got to train them. You have to work with them. You have to go to battle with them, and you have to win with them on your team. I mean, a few of you have played team sports. You know what it's like? Everybody knows you've had that one person that's never played that sport before coming up through Pee Wee ball. Oh, why is this guy on the team? Put him in right field. That's where they go. Right? So you could about imagine how SEALs feel, how they would feel that they have to believe in a mission and work with something like that. Make it work. There's no other option there. Make it work because the higher-ups tell you to. This is what you have to do. Chapter 4, check the ego. Check the ego. Check the ego. You know, in some cases, ego is good, right? Motivates you to succeed. It gives you a driving force that, you know what, I'm not just going to lay down and take it. I'm going to rise up and I'm going to be successful with myself. But then ego can get out of hand too. I mean, most of us know that feeling. We know when we pound our chest and say, look at me, look at me. Gets in the way, doesn't it? You never take the enemy for granted. Humble yourself. That's what check the ego means. Humble yourself. Now, you know, I wonder, I'll admit it, I haven't read all of the books in here, but I can tell you for certain that every single one of them talks about humility and being humble. You know, I talked about my friends at the Eagle Way Church of Christ and being asked to be a greeter at the door. And I was, for a couple years, really, I did that. And then one Wednesday, I showed up for Bible study in my normal chair that was right in front of me in the classroom. And there was a note sitting right there. And the note was from another member in the church. It didn't say who, it was anonymous. But it said that they feel that it is not my place to be wearing shorts and flip-flops to be a greeter or a welcomer at their church if I was wearing shorts and flip-flops. That, I don't know how that would make most of you feel. Let me tell you, a guy in his 20s in the Army with an ego didn't make me feel all that great either. I was upset by it. You know, did I flip out? Did I go searching for anybody or for the person who wrote it? No. Actually, I went to the preacher, and the preacher was a good friend of mine. And he calmed me down. He talked some sense into me and some wisdom. And he found a way to get me to just be humble with myself. So I took an honest look at myself and I was like, you know what? If me wearing shorts and flip-flops is really going to take away from somebody hearing the message and hearing the word and hearing what they need to hear, if they're more focused on me wearing flip-flops in the back, that can't be the case. And I don't want that to be the case. And I'm not going to take away from that, so I'll just put on some jeans. Now, of course, I'm so thankful that I haven't heard of any of you who have cared for me to wear some flip-flops and shorts. I mean, Kenny's delivered a whole message and all that, so it's not really a problem here. It's just it's a story in which it's just humility will go far away, a long way for you. You know, it's another way to just get off the sideline. Humble yourself. So why am I up here talking about leadership and just being part of a team? Why? And I was that guy. I was that kid on the sidelines. I drove my coaches crazy. I drove them crazy because if I was on the sideline, I was saying, Coach, put me in the game. Put me in the game, put me in the game, put me in the game, please. I just want to get into the game. Put me in, Coach. Put me in. Put me in. Put me in. Why did I want to go in so bad? Because I felt like I could make a difference. I just felt like I could contribute in a way that would help us win, succeed, and I could be a part of that. And I didn't feel like I was a part of that being on the sidelines. Just standing in the background, knowing there's so much I could do to help. There's so much that I could do. So I'm talking about being part of a team. Just go back to Romans chapter 12. For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function, so we, though many, are one body in Christ and individually members of one another. We are all members of that team. We are all members of that team. And if you hadn't noticed yet, Christ, Jesus himself, came here in the flesh, and he led a life that set the ultimate example of what extreme ownership is. He set that example. So any successful team, like I said earlier, the best leaders don't just take responsibility for their job, they take extreme ownership of everything that impacts their mission. Christ is our ultimate leader. The ultimate leader. It's perfect, sinless, blameless. And guess what? You are either on his team or you're on somebody else's team. Maybe it's your own team. For most of us, look around. And I don't just mean inside the building. I mean just look around this country. Look around the world. Look out for number one is what you hear, right? Everybody knows when you say look out for number one, you mean, well, look out for yourself. But really, who is number one? Who's number one? If Christ is that number one and he is our ultimate leader, let me tell you, he is taking a beating on that field right now. His name is being smeared as recklessly as possible. Am I wrong about that? We, as individuals, we have to take that ownership on ourselves. We have to get in the game. You can't just sit on the sidelines and think, oh, I'm good over here. Christ got my back because I believe in him. I have that faith. He'll have mercy on me when it's time. That's not how it works. You get in the game. You have to. You can't just sit on the sidelines. I'm not telling you that you have to just beg to get into the game. I'm not saying that at all. But you're either on his team or you're on someone else's. If you're trying to do it yourself, how's that working out for you? If you're working with the other team, we all know who the evil one is. And we know who's on his team. They make themselves pretty obvious. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. I translate that, or translate it into bad subordinate leaders. Because we already have the ultimate leader. Christ has already won. The best part about it is Christ already has the victory. He's just waiting for us to get in line with him, to join the team. Just believe. What's stopping you from believing? Do you need more examples? Do you need someone like Paul who was just killing innocent people for spreading the good news, for spreading that gospel, to one day dying on his behalf? I mean, you don't just go from a persecutor to champion in the name of Christ without intervention, without that moment. If you want to know what that moment is and you still don't know, I would encourage you to read about every book that Paul wrote in the New Testament. Check the ego and humble yourself. Humble yourself. Humble yourself. Humble. How many times are you sitting there asking, why does this have to happen to me? Why me? Why me? Why? This sucks. Well, I'm going to ask you, why not you? Why not you? Why not you, Isaiah? Why won't you come up here and preach a message? Why not you, Jonathan? It's your turn to do it, buddy. Why not you? Really? We can play the poor me game all day long. But I'll say it again. The best leaders don't just take responsibility for their job, they take extreme ownership of everything that impacts their mission. I don't know. What's your mission? Are you just trying to go through this life as comfortable as possible? Return to the dirt, some people say. There's no hope in that. At least to me, there's not. I don't see hope in just going back to the dirt as if my life meant nothing while I was here. You know, why not you? You know, hey, look at that, I'm right on time again. My goodness, I don't know how that happened. But talk about extreme ownership and owning that relationship with Christ. Humbling yourself before Him and finding ways to please Him it doesn't have to be, earth-shattering. It doesn't have to be beyond that proportion of faith that you've been given. It could be something as small as a smile that just lifts somebody up. And I know when I'm down in the dumps and I'm feeling really tough on myself, I find that if I just force myself to smile through it and just keep smiling, people respond to that and it just lifts me up. You know? Other subtle things. Occasionally, I live in Lafayette, y'all know this. I run across homeless people all the time going through the north side of Lafayette. It sucks to see. It really does. And then I don't want to rush to judgment and think that every one of those people's choices have been drugs or just the wrong choice. Because there are people out there that need to hear the message, that need the good news, and they need just a little hand every once in a while. But occasionally you get asked for money. I don't want to give them money. So how do I live with that on my conscience? Well, one way I got over that was I just take a case of water, leave that in the back of the truck. And anytime that I run across somebody, I'm at the red light, I could just hand them a bottle of water. You know, it doesn't shatter the world, but it does something. Something. And just being part of that team, I want to tell you a little story about a friend of mine who helped me out through this. You know, I told him that I would use what he told me in this message, which he kind of got a kick out of it. But I'll give you a little backstory of my friend. I met Brody back when I was working in the oil field, and we instantly became friends. We have a lot of similar likes in sports and everything else. Just to kind of give you an idea of what our friendship was like, I was doing well testing with working offshore with Brody, and we had a little container that we would use for our office space that sat on a rig. And in that container, we had a microphone. That way we could call anyone on the rig that we needed to, whether it be the crane operator, whether it be, the OC, whoever that we needed to get in touch with, we could just call. It would send out an intercom message to that person. They could pick up the phone and answer. Well, one day, me and Brody were just sitting around in the container, bored, and there's not much going on. And we're talking, we're having a wonderful time. I say wonderful. We start to kick up in some song. And the song we both started to sing, I was singing one part of The Lion Sleeps Tonight, going, a wee moet, a wee moet, a wee moet, a wee moet. And Brody, having the high-pitched voice that he does, just nailed the other part. Nailed it. Nailed it. Yeah, if you watch this, Brody, you nailed it, dude. At the end of it, at the very end, our little speaker box comes on and says, hey, I don't know who's singing, but did you know your microphone's on? The entire rig could hear us. But I wanted to give you that little backstory because I was talking to him just 2 days ago, and I invited him to come here, but he worships down at Our Savior's. He plays the guitar on Sunday service, so he couldn't be here. And he was just telling me, you know what, man, like I said earlier, you're just a man. He said, I'm so proud of you and everything that you're doing and all of that. The way he said it, it just hit me. There's someone that close that I don't have much contact with him. I want to have more. But being part of that body, it's not just restricted to in this room. It's not just restricted here. That body is everywhere around us. Absolutely everywhere. And everywhere that we take Christ with us, that body goes with you. And you get to share that message with people that brings more and more into that body with you. And just when you need it, right at the right time, when your anxiety is just about to go through the roof, somebody steps in and he says something that just brings you instant peace. Instant peace. But anyways, the microphone was on that day. It was on. But isn't the microphone always on? God's always listening. He's always listening. If you believe that, why don't you stand and sing?